Hi, everyone, and welcome to Remaking Tomorrow, a series of conversations about the future of teaching and learning. I'm Ryan Ridzeski here with Greg Baer, and we are the co-authors of When You Wonder You're Learning, Mr. Rogers' enduring lessons for raising creative, curious, caring kids.
This is a podcast powered by Remake Learning, a network that ignites engaging and relevant learning in support of young people navigating rapid social and technological change.
On today's episode, we're talking with Vicki Phillips, CEO of the National Center on Education and the Economy, where she leads a team of researchers, policymakers, and practitioners who work to create education systems that prepare young people for the modern demands of work and life. We're so excited to talk to her. Vicki, welcome to Remaking Tomorrow.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
Oh, we're the lucky ones. Thank you, Vicki, for being here. And let's just start simply enough. The National Center on Education and Economy. This is an organization that's been around for decades. Some people, I suspect, know it really well. Others might not know it as well. And it would be enough to take on education, but you take on education and the economy. So maybe also speak to the connection of those two ideas and concepts and how NCEE is meeting some gaps in the education marketplace.
So as you said, we are nearly 40 years old, and we were founded on the idea that the nation's education system and its economy are deeply intertwined. That when economies evolve from industrial to knowledge-based and now into the AI era, that education systems must evolve as well. So we work across the country to help prepare young people to think critically, solve complex problems, continue learning across their long lifetimes, because economies become more innovative and resilient when education is strong and communities become more stable. For us, education is so much more than an individual opportunity, although that's critically important. It's also about economic mobility, civic strength, and long-term national viability.
So the center organizes its work into three categories: discover, design, and deliver. And we just want to take these one at a time. First, the center works to learn from educational systems around the world to discover what works. What works in preparing students for the future of work? What works in preparing students for the future of just being an adult? What is a lesson, or what are some lessons you think that American educational system can learn from other places around the world?
So the work that we do around the world in terms of looking at other systems, both globally and increasingly domestically, is based on both high-performing places and places that are rapidly rising. And the distillation of that research really leads us to think hard about four things. One is how you prepare young people for long life learning, understanding that we're all living longer and that across their extended lifetimes, things will keep dramatically changing for today's young people. The second is cultivating high capacity, forward-thinking educators who can make sure that young people are set on the path to flourishing, to really thriving, to becoming creative, caring, and curious kids, as you were stating earlier. A third is to join forces to ensure that learners thrive, a recognition that no education system can do it alone, that it needs the help of communities and business and industry and others, all of us indeed wrapping our arms around young people and helping them be successful. And the last that we find in many of these places we study is that they think very differently about systems leadership and how leaders need to behave as they anticipate the future.
So you're discovering and then turning to that second prong of designing. Say I'm the leader of a school system in southwestern Pennsylvania. And like any local system in America, local context matters. And so I say to you, Vicki, what can I possibly learn from Finland or Peru, let alone Mississippi or California? Can you talk about how you help communities then design with that world-class thinking in mind in a way that meets that deep desire in that American context for local control?
Sure. So when we study systems, we're looking at the core elements of their success, the dynamic interconnections, and how the disparate elements come together. And it's not a how-to guide or a cookie cutter solution. Think of it as a direction of travel, a driver of dialogue, a springboard to possibility that then leaves it up to policymakers and educators to determine how that fits within their own context and their own communities. So we leave room for helping people to determine how they do these things in their own way. And indeed, many times how they go even further faster than some of these other places are doing. So we take all that, those insights that we discover, and we then help schools, districts, and states translate that research into inspiring, actionable, even trajectory altering policy and program designs or systems redesign on the ground. But again, done their way in a local community against their priorities, their context, the things that matter the most to them.
And you're hinting at the third prong now, which is delivering. Delivering on these insights, delivering advocacy, delivering school leadership coaching, all sorts of things that the center does with its partners. And I'm wondering if you could talk about the way or ways that the center is working to deliver with and for its partners that particularly excites you.
Well, we get a great deal of joy from working on the ground with schools and districts and states. And we're very fortunate to have a team of professionals who come from all of those roles. We have all either been classroom teachers or school leaders or superintendents or policymakers or philanthropists or technologists. So we have an array of talent on our team. And that enables us to work closely with schools, districts, and states to redesign, again, against their priorities. And that might mean that in a school, we're helping school leaders rethink the enabling conditions in which teaching and learning can thrive, from how they use time to how they strategically staff to how they might engage in project-based learning or other more engaging pedagogies for young people. We might be helping a school district redesign an early learning program or their career pathways. And we might be helping a state actually redesign their policy set so that there is more room for innovation and so that they're taking down longstanding existing barriers to innovation and capacity building on the ground. And in some places, we get to do all three of those. So in some places, we get to help change the policy set and help think through what implementation on the ground could look like, and to help bring deep ownership and commitment to what the state is trying to do among those people who matter most, which is those people who reside in those states and consistently care about what happens to the young people that call the place home.
This is Greg Baer, here with Ryan Rudzeski, and we're talking with Vicki Phillips, Chief Executive Officer of the National Center on Education and the Economy.
Vicki, the National Center on Education and the Economy published a rich document called the NCEE Blueprint, basically which sought to distill 4 decades of research on the world's top education systems into actionable insights. It just sounds like an enormous task. I'm wondering if you could tell us about the process of developing that blueprint, of distilling all those lessons. And while it's certainly not going to be possible to go into all of those insights today, maybe 1 or 2 findings from that blueprint that you just can't shake, that you just can't stop thinking about.
So we've been benchmarking around the world for a long time, but over the last year or two, we have really revamped our methodology. And we also wanted to go out post-COVID and see if the things that top performing countries and rapidly rising countries said were true previously still hold true right now in terms of how they are focusing on young people. And out of that blueprint, which again is just a distillation of the insights and things that we learned, the 4 things I mentioned earlier sort of surfaced. How do you prepare young people for long life learning? How do you cultivate high capacity, forward thinking educators? How do you join forces across sectors to ensure that learners thrive? And how do you think differently about systems leadership? And we also included some anticipating the future pieces in there because we always like to help people lean forward and see around corners. But there are certain insights that stick with us. And I would say maybe call our attention to three. One is that coherence is a hidden multiplier. Like, it's not just individual reforms that drive results, it's real coherence where top systems align everything from top to bottom. And the secret sauce isn't in a single indicator, it's in how things connect and reinforce each other over time. We've learned that fragmentation is the enemy of excellence, and that the most successful systems reflect that deep kind of alignment and coherence. The second is that systems require a new kind of leadership. The things that we think about and that have so long been the hallmark of leadership, creating a vision, aligning goals to that vision, creating an execution plan, all those things still hold as important, but there's the fundamentals now and not the ceiling. And the ceiling of leadership is more around things like leaders who can test long-held assumptions and are willing to revisit the purpose of schooling, especially in the rapidly changing world we live in right now. They're leaders who can invite diverse ways of thinking and who broaden coalitions even beyond what they're traditionally comfortable with. They're leaders who hold a wider definition of success and a reasonable timeline for achieving it. And that reasonable timeline is not a generation of young people. You can actually do it much faster. Most of these countries get dramatic, more outsized results for young people in anywhere from 3 to 5 to 8 years. Another piece around leaders is that they're willing to benchmark against the best. They don't treat it like a cookie cutter, but they want to learn what people are doing and take that into account as they think about their local context and goals and build on that and go one better in their own context. And then the other is that they sort of hold two perspectives. They hold the perspective of what is in front of them now, and they maintain a relentless focus on the future. So that's the kind of new leadership that systems require and these successful systems emulate. And then the last thing I would say is that education systems have to design for lifetimes, not just for graduation. In these countries and in the conversations they're having across communities and business and industry and everyone who need to wrap their arms around young people and help them flourish, is that there's no finish line. Industries are being disrupted overnight. Entire categories of jobs are merging and disappearing in less than a decade. That model doesn't really fit anymore given those circumstances and the rapidly shifting global economy. So what we see these countries doing is thinking about long life learning, continuous education across all stages of an extended lifetime. And they see that as a cornerstone of both social mobility and economic resilience. And they're giving that nod to the reality that we're all living longer and that young people are going to need the education and skills to thrive across that extended lifetime and to upskill and reskill. So they focus on strong early foundations and success through graduation. They make clear secondary pathways and on-ramps. They make sure that accessible adult reskilling and upskilling is available, and that all of those systems are aligned and talking to each other so that they're preparing young people for a lifetime of reinvention, not just preparing students for a single job.
Essentially asking, what sort of humans do we want coming out of these schools and these communities?
Yes.
It makes me want to draw upon your immense wisdom and your own foresight. So let's take a step back in that context. And as you look ahead and thinking of the parents and teachers listening to this podcast right now, what do you see as the key skills that we need to help today's students nurture and develop so that they have that lifetime sensibility and they're going to succeed and navigate the economies that we can't yet predict or anticipate?
So it's such an important question, particularly for this moment in time. We have aspirations that go way beyond academic readiness. And I want to be really clear, we believe deeply in the academic readiness that young people need to thrive across their lifetimes. But we also want students to learn how to lead with integrity, to work collaboratively, to hold themselves to high standards when the going gets tough. We want them to be kind and resilient, to engage with the world around them, to find joy in contributing to their communities, to be that generation that is ready to make a positive impact on everyone around them and the places where they live. And education is such a critical part of that. So we would say that there's sort of 4 broad categories in which long life, personal and professional thriving can be talked about, understood, be in conversation about. This isn't a cookie cutter again, it's a springboard for conversation. The first are those all important core academic foundational skills, but we want young people to build that academic foundation and also the interdisciplinary fluency to solve complex problems and apply that foundational knowledge in new contexts. The second big category would be habits of learning and well-being. How do young people develop the mindsets and practices that support that long life learning, their personal fulfillment, their well-being? How do they embrace the power of learning, not just as a means to academic and career success, but as a way to enrich their lives? Contemporary skills would be the third piece for us, where students need to develop that foundation that's not only helps them be successful in school, but also across a lifetime of professional and technological evolutions. And then another category we think is incredibly important, I personally think is incredibly important, is community skills. How do you help young people engage responsibly, ethically, empathetically in civic and social life in their community and in the larger world? And the thing that's so powerful about all 4 of those categories when taken together is that that's also what young people tell us that they need in order to flourish.
Vicki, you've mentioned now a few times lifelong learning and long life learning. And in your own career, you've had a really impressive and varied trajectory. You've worked in education at all levels. You started as a classroom teacher. You were a superintendent of several districts. You were even Pennsylvania's state secretary of education. But you've also worked in other industries. You've helped to lead National Geographic, and you've worked at the Gates Foundation. And I'm curious, given your broad perspective, are there things that school systems and school leaders might learn from other industries, from other economic sectors outside of education?
In so many places that we see being successful, both globally and here in the United States, there's incredible involvement from other sectors, from health organizations to industry. Almost any organization that can be brought to bear on young people and their connectedness to their school, to their community, and their overall academic health, along with their well-being and other pieces that we've talked about. Most places around the world don't believe they need to do all of that alone, or that the school needs to do all of that alone. They believe that other sectors are really important. Then we also have to start to think prenatal through 100. How do we have the institutions in young people's lives be very aligned and connected in a way that we haven't really had to think about too hard in the US? Like, we have thought about it, like we think hard about PK to 20, but this actually asks us to lift our sight and vision even higher than that and think all the way along that trajectory and what that will look like and how all of the institutions in young people's lives can play a role in that.
Vicki, well, there are about 143 questions I could and want to ask you right now. We want to bring this conversation to a close with some fun and joyful questions about you, our guest. And so we're looking for the first answers that come to mind. Are you ready for the lightning round of questions?
Sure.
You started your career as a classroom teacher in Franklin, Kentucky. What's a lesson from your time in the classroom that you carry with you to this day?
the power of team teaching and learning from fantastic colleagues.
We should note for our listeners that there was no editing out of a pause there. Vicki just leapt in with that answer. You
Not even a millisecond. That was not even a millisecond.
That was impressive.
I love it. Think back on your own educational journey as Vicki the student. What's one way that your own educators help you find success in the economy in which you're operating today?
I would be remiss if I didn't say that I actually have had a fantastic career, but a rough start. I grew up in very rural, high poverty area. And actually, it was unfortunately less my teachers, although they were instrumental, than it was a peer who actually set my path on college and literally changed my life.
And what's one thing from either your professional or your personal life that makes you look to the future with hope and joy?
Oh, I can sum that up by giving you a quote from a young person who said to me, young people are the most untapped resource for hope. And I think we spend a lot of time right now thinking about what young people aren't doing, what they shouldn't be doing, that we're worried about their anxieties and other things. And I'm not dismissing that. Those are very real challenges they and we have to help navigate. But when I look at young people and the way they are willing to work intergenerationally, to be solution seekers, to have their interests tapped in service of good, I have real hope for the future, actually.
I love that answer. Vicki, before we go, just one more question. What's one thing that parents and educators can do today to make tomorrow a more promising place for every learner?
Help change the learning experience. Give young people new ways to engage in joyful learning. Help them see learning as a lifetime joyful endeavor.
Thank you so much to Vicki Phillips, CEO of the National Center on Education and the Economy. Remaking Tomorrow is powered by Remake Learning. Learn more at remakelearning.org.